Next, I'm going to go through how to generate topics from nothing. So the related topics exercise relies on already having an initial topic to bounce off of. That's not always going to be the case. You're not always going to be in an existing conversation. So one exercise I named tactical small talk. Basically what we do here, it's a bit harder to do on your own, this one. If I was with someone, I'd prompt them at random intervals and say go, and at that point they start talking to me about anything. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter if it's random, ridiculous, weird, just that they start talking, and then we try and grow an actual conversation so that it's not a monologue, it's not an interview, we're exchanging statements and questions back and forth. Ideally, you want to be able to come up with stuff that's just in your head, and this will become easier with practice. But obviously that might sound a mile off for some people who are watching this. So some shortcuts that we can use, so it's called social shortcuts, is 1, use your senses. So there's always something that you can look at, or perhaps even if you're blind, you've got other senses, like hearing, etc. Sight tends to be the easiest one. There's always something that you're looking at that you can start to talk about. The next thing you can do is you can think about recent memories that you have. That might be a few moments in the past, a few hours, a few days, or weeks, or whatever. So recent memories is something you can backtrack and find something to talk about. Remember to prioritize having something that's not as good rather than being slow and not having anything. Maybe except in some extremely formal situations, like I mentioned earlier, job interview, funeral, something like that. That's a very small percentage of the time. Other than that, you're better off saying the thing that pops into your head that's a bit weird or a bit out of the ordinary or doesn't really fit, because you can easily, within a few sentences, transition into something good. It's not that difficult. The third thing that we can do as a shortcut to generate topics from nothing is to go back to a previously unfinished topic, or it doesn't necessarily even need to be unfinished, just a previous topic in the conversation that you can go back to talk about. Obviously, this relies on there having been existing substance to the conversation, but if your conversation has been longer than 1 minute, or you know the person from before, there's almost definitely topics left unfinished that you can go back to continue with. And like I said before, in the related topics part of this course, if you can park one of those in your head and use it as ammunition to come back to later and make a habit of doing that and just being aware of what topics were left unfinished, or maybe they weren't left unfinished but they're easy to go back to and continue more stuff on, or you happened to think about something new from one of them, that's a good habit to get into. The fourth way to generate topics from nothing is if you're texting, just go through your photos and see if there's something there that's relevant to a conversation or they might find interesting or funny. You can go the extra mile and create a separate album on your phone if you have a smartphone, and have an album for memes or funny or interesting stuff, etc. And then you can access these things faster, which might be important if you're in a conversation by text, which is more of an instant messaging kind of conversation than a pen pal type conversation. One sequence that we can do, I have had some people in the past who have still found this difficult. What are you immediately looking at, or what are you immediately thinking? And then think of 3 related things to it, and then pick one that you like. Especially if you're someone who really doesn't want to talk about stuff that they're not as into, even if it is likely to quickly lead to something better. Because this way, there's always going to be something that you can sense. Like I said, sight is usually the easiest one to do this with. And there's always something in your mind that you're thinking about. And then you can branch some related topics. If you practiced the earlier exercise, then this will be easier. And then you've got more of a variety, so it's more likely that there's something there that you can talk about. You can also use this with the earlier things I just mentioned, like recent memories. So you might have a recent memory, and then you can quickly use for related topics exercise in combination, branch out some related subjects when you've got more things there, and then you can choose one that you like or you think might work best for whatever you're trying to achieve from the social situation, etc., and present that in a conversational format, obviously. So the exercise tactical small talk, which is my name for it, you can rename it if you want to, if you're extra creative. is easier to do with a partner. Prompt each other at random intervals, tactical small talk, go, or just go, and then start talking about something. Level 1 is that you can use my cheats, or shortcuts rather than cheats. You can use the shortcuts. What are you looking at? What can you sense? What recent memories do you have? Level 2 is to try to not use those and just use your imagination and your mental capacity to summon random subjects, which ideally we should be reaching. Once you're at a point where your mind is basically a random word generator, if you want it to, then you can really start to generate stuff fast, and it becomes very hard to run out of things to say in conversation because you'll always have a nice variety of stuff there.